All right, so it's good to be able to convert angles between degrees and radians to degrees. All right, and to do that, we're just going to use a conversion factor. Now, this conversion factor, we kind of talked about it in the last video, at the very end of the last video, but it's also just comes from the fact that there are 2 pi radians per 360 degrees. I'm just going to call it, just write DEG instead of using a degree symbol, just so that you can see the unit analysis here. That can reduce down to pi radians per 180 degrees. Okay, so to some extent you can do this with unit analysis, because I know there's pi radians in 180 degrees, which also means that there are 180 degrees in pi radians. So let's take a look at this first, example 6 here. Let's look at example 6. We just want to convert these angles from degrees to radians. All right, so if we take, just using unit analysis here, let's just use unit analysis for the fun of it. Right, we got 30 degrees. We want to convert it to radians, so we're going to multiply by pi radians per 180 degrees. All right, and see if I write it like a unit, and like a normal unit, the degrees will cancel. What I'm left with is going to be radians. Okay, now I can see a factor of 10, right, because this is 30 is 3 times 10, and so I can cancel. 180 is 18 times 10. And then I see a factor of 3. So I'm going to make this a 1, and I can divide 18 by 3 and get 6. So if I reduce this fraction down, I see that 30 degrees is pi over 6 radians. Okay, so all I did is multiply by that conversion factor, pi radians per 180 degrees, and then reduce the fraction down. All right, so let's do that again. Now, feel free to pause the video, try these on your own, and then fast forward to the end and check your answers. But we're going to convert a negative 60. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do this with the conventional units. And I'm just going to multiply that again by pi over 180, because there are pi radians in 180 degrees. And so again, I can see a factor of 10. I'm going to cancel out the factor of 10, and then I can divide 18 by 6. So this is going to end up being a -1, and then 18 divided by 6 is 3. So I'm going to get a negative pi over 3 radians. Okay. Now I'm writing radians, RID, as a unit, but technically, if you see, the convention is that radians don't really have units. Okay, so I'm just writing radians, but if you see an angle and it doesn't say degrees, then you can assume that it's radians. Okay, you might run into that in the online homework. All right, so 210 degrees. Again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take 210 degrees and multiply by the conversion factor, pi over 180. And again, I see a factor of 10, so I'm going to cancel the zeros. And then, let's see, 21, that's 3 times 7. So let's cancel a factor of 3. That'll make that this 6. And then when I reduce this down, I'm going to get 7 pi over 6 radians. Okay. And then finally, 1 degree. 1 degree, I'm just going to take the 1 degree times 1 degree times pi over 180. 180. Okay, just multiply those two things out. Now, that's going to be pretty simple. That's just pi over 180. Okay. Now, pi is a number. I'm writing these all in exact form. But pi is 3.1415926, blah, 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 right? It goes on and on, right? So I could put this in my calculator and get a decimal approximation if I wanted to. So 1 degree is about, again, putting this in my calculator, taking pi, dividing by 180, I get 0.0175 if I round it off to 4 decimal places, radians, right? So I'm just but I can leave it as pi over 180. Pi over 180 would be the exact form, but any of these angles and radians that have a pi in it can be converted to a decimal approximation. All right, it's just typically we write it in exact form. So you have to be careful though, because a lot of times when you convert a whole number of radians a whole number of degrees to radians, you're going to end up with a pi in it. But an angle measured in radians doesn't always have a pi in it. So it doesn't. But it's just what happens when you convert a whole number of degrees to radians. You're going to get a pi if you want the answer in exact form. All right, I'm going to meet you in the next video for example 7.